At that moment, when I was drowning, my father had died, my job had fallen apart. I was sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling reality itself crack. And then Max appeared. We weren't old friends. We knew each other through acquaintances. But he showed up first, not with empty words, but with actions. He brought food, sorted through the stacks of papers on my desk, found unpaid bills among them, and calmly paid them. You'll pay me back when you can, no rush. He said he'd sleep on my couch for the first few nights, just in case, so I wouldn't be alone. Paralyzed by grief, I let it happen. His presence was a heavy but warm blanket. It pressed down, but it warmed me. Max became my translator from the language of everyday life. He answered my calls. Sorry, he can't talk right now. He monitored my messages. Thank you for your condolences. He needs peace. He made decisions. No, you won't go to the funeral. It would be unbearable. This was convenient even for me. I was a child in a cocoon, and he was the walls of that cocoon. Then he temporarily moved in with me because he was having rental problems. My apartment became ours. He started decorating it. He threw out my father's old rug. It holds bad energy. You won't be able to move forward. He rearranged the furniture. According to feng shui, this is better for your depressive state. He took charge of all the finances. I'd better sort out your finances. You're crazy. I'd wake up and he'd already been making coffee. He'd say, you need to do 3 things today. Take a shower, eat soup, and watch this TV show. It'll distract you. And I obediently did. His routine became my law. And when I once objected, saying I wanted to go for a walk alone, he looked at me with calm, almost paternal pity. Are you sure? In your condition? Just look at yourself. The world will consume you. I won't let it. And I looked in the mirror, at my puffy face, at my dull eyes, and I believed him. 6 months later, I began to come to my senses. I wanted to go back to work, to see old friends. And then the cocoon turned into a cell. Work? Max asked. You said yourself that is depressing you. I've already written to everyone on your behalf that you're going through a deep crisis and are taking a break. They understand. My friends, they betrayed you. No one but me visited you in your darkest days. They called once and forgot. You don't need them. He began collecting evidence. He showed me old, out-of-context messages from colleagues, implying my incompetence. He recalled hurtful comments from friends years ago. He was creating an alternate version of my life, where I was the eternal victim and he the only protector. I tried to take my passport to renew my bank cards. He calmly said, you won't find it. I hid it. For your own safety. When people are depressed, they act recklessly. For the first time, a cold, sharp fear gripped me. It wasn't anxiety, it was captivity. I began quietly checking. It turned out he had renounced his inheritance, a small house, in my name so as not to burden himself. He had changed the passwords to my email and social media accounts. My phone number was linked to his account. I was cut off from the world, not by grief, but by him. When I found the strength to call a psychologist, I did so secretly from a nearby cafe. I made an appointment. The feeling of hope was so strong, it was painful. When I returned home, I saw Max sitting quietly on the couch. My laptop lay on the table in front of him, my messages open. My appointment with the psychologist was canceled. The automatic reply, sorry, the consultation is no longer necessary. He didn't shout. He smiled. That same tired, kind smile of a savior. Why? I forced out. Because I've already cured everything. Because those charlatans will only profit from your pain. Because everything you need to heal is here. Me. Our home. Our peaceful life. I tried to break free and rushed to the door. It was locked with a chain. The key to the lock had long since been lost, and Max said it wasn't a big deal. We're always together. He stood up and slowly walked towards me. He put his hands on my shoulders. His fingers dug into my bones. "Look at you," he whispered, his voice filled with genuine pain. "You're panicking again. You're back in the same state I pulled you out of. Can't you see that I'm the only thing standing between you and the abyss? Without me, you'll shatter. You'll go back to that day when you sat and stared at the ceiling. Is that what you want? Do you want to go back to being that poor, weak, pathetic person? Or do you want to stay here, safe, with me?" And the scariest part was, that part of my brain screamed, "He's right." He'd crafted this reality so masterfully that leaving it was like jumping into an icy void. I was suspended between the horror of him and the even greater horror of a world without him. That night, I didn't make a heroic escape. I broke. I nodded. I said, "Okay, I'm staying." And this good became my password, my pass to the next stage. He loosened his grip, believing I'd resigned myself, that I'd finally become his. I started playing this game, playing the perfect victim, the perfect friend. I thanked him for the soup. I watched his chosen TV shows with rapture. I pretended my old desires had died. I became the mirror in which he wanted to see me. My lies became more accurate than his truth. 2 months later, I sobbed and told him I thought I had heart problems, that I felt a tightness in my chest. Alarmed, he took me to a private clinic, paying everything out of our bill, of course. While he filled out the paperwork at reception, I went to the bathroom. I used a secret exit I'd noticed on the building map a week earlier. I had only one key in my pocket, the one for the mailbox at the train station, rented through a frontmate. It contained cash, an old passport, the one he lost, I found and replaced with a copy, and a train ticket, one way, to a city I once casually mentioned I hated. He's looking for me, I know. He's writing letters to my old email address. I read them. He's calling former colleagues, telling them I'm relapsing, suffering from amnesia, that I'm a danger to myself. He's a tragic hero, searching for his missing, crazy friend. And I live in the grayest, most faceless apartment in the very city I hate. I work as a loader. I don't talk to anyone. I'm free. But this freedom smells of medication from that clinic and his cologne. Every morning I wake up and lie motionless for a minute, checking myself. What do I want for breakfast? What music do I want to listen to? Sometimes the answer comes immediately. Sometimes it takes a few hours. There's only one thing scarier, because in his reality, you didn't escape. You just got lost, and he'll definitely find you. After all, he knows you better than you know yourself. I was 30, and I just moved to this city after a painful breakup. I was working from home, living in a studio apartment, and the only person I'd interacted with for more than a week was the barista at the coffee shop on the corner. His name was Leo, and he always left a heart-shaped mark in the foam of my cappuccino. It was the peak of my social life. So, in one of the newcomers groups in town, I timidly wrote, "Bored, don't know anyone, maybe we could go somewhere?" A dozen people responded, but only one. His name was Adam. He replied not in a private message, but directly under the post. "I'll break you out of this shell, bro. Life isn't meant to be cooped up. There was something insistent, even aggressively kind, in that phrase. But at the time, it felt like salvation. We met. Adam was my complete opposite. Loud, energetic, with an infectious laugh that made heads turn. He knew every bar, every path in the park, all the right people. The first few weeks were like intensive therapy. He literally burst into my life. We're going to a concert of an unknown band tonight. Tomorrow we're grilling kebabs on my balcony. I've invited a bunch of cool guys. We're going to the lake on Sunday. I've already arranged everything. I was stunned and overjoyed. After months of silence and self-reflection, this kaleidoscope of events, this surge of friendship, seemed like a gift from heaven. He helped me choose new furniture, because your couch is a nightmare. He supposedly found me the best therapist in town when I casually mentioned stress. He gave me books that would turn my mind upside down, and music it would be a shame not to know. I felt like a child being held by the hand of an experienced, tireless adult. I trusted. I was grateful. But then the first barely noticeable scratches appeared. He'd ask, "So, have you seen that therapist?" I hope he didn't gossip about me, and laugh. But there wasn't a shred of humor in his eyes. He started criticizing my old friends, whom I occasionally called, "Come on, he's an energy vampire. Listen to his whining. You should go to a football game with me instead." He'd get angry if I didn't answer his messages within an hour. I was worried. I thought something was wrong with you. You know how dangerous this city is. I defended him. He's just caring. He just wants the best for me. It's just his personality. I started noticing oddities. Mutual acquaintances we ran into looked at me strangely. One day, a girl I'd had a few drinks with pulled me aside and said, "Listen, Adam spent an hour yesterday explaining to me how ungrateful and difficult you are, and that he's the only one who's attracted to you. Is that true?" My stomach dropped. I called Adam. He didn't deny it. He said, "She's not right for you. I saw the way she looked at you. I just saved you the trouble. You'll thank me later." There wasn't a hint of remorse in his voice. It was the confidence of an architect who'd simply removed an unnecessary detail from my life plan. Later, I learned that he'd rejected an interesting freelance project on my behalf, telling the client I was overwhelmed with more important work. He told me, "This project is nothing, a mere pittance. I'll find you something better." I started checking my email. It turned out he knew my password for the old email address I'd used to sign up. He cleaned my correspondence, filtered my sentences. The world around me began to shrink, like in movies about drowning. The light overhead dims, and my foot gets tangled in seaweed. That seaweed is him, his care, his absolute control, disguised with a smile and phrases like, "I'm my friend. I know better. We're brothers." The climax came on my birthday. I decided to throw a quiet dinner. I invited a couple of colleagues and the same girl. Adam, of course, knew. He said, "Great, I'll take care of everything." He arrived first, with a huge cake, bottles of alcohol, and such a welcoming demeanor that my guest immediately wilted. All evening, he spoke for me. He interrupted. He told salacious stories from our past, 90% of which were made up. He mocked my work, disguising it as a joke. When I tried to protest, he put his arm around my shoulders, squeezed so hard my bones cracked, and said loudly, "He's so shy, he'd be lost without me." The girl left first, with poorly concealed irritation. My colleagues soon followed suit. We were left alone in the apartment. Piles of dirty dishes, half-empty bottles, and a ringing silence. "You see," Adam said quietly, drying his glass, "you don't need them. They don't value you. They came, they ate, they left. My only real friend is me. Me, the one who stayed behind to clean up after your party." Something inside me broke. Not a scream, but a quiet, cold breakdown. I said, "Leave, now, and don't come back." He didn't move. The smile slipped from his face like a mask. Something empty and tense remained. "After everything I've done for you," his voice was icy, "I've put so much effort into you. I created you from scratch. You're my project, and projects don't fire their creators." He walked straight up to me, not to fight, to confirm a fact. "Do you think they'll call you? They've already received messages from me apologizing for your behavior and saying you need to think about your life. Tomorrow, your phone will break. Work? I already texted your client that you're having creative block. Who needs you? You're alone, completely alone, except me." At that moment, I didn't see a monster in him. I saw a mirror, reflecting my loneliness, my weakness, my trust, which he had turned into property. And that was more terrifying than any outburst of rage. I didn't fight him. I didn't scream. I looked at him and said, "Fine, you win. The person you invested in is dead. They're truly gone. I'll stay the one you never knew." The next morning, I ate his cake alone. Every sweet, cloying bite. I cried with disgust, but I ate it. It felt like a ritual. Then I rented out my apartment. I changed my phone number. I deleted all social media. I created a new email address. I quit my remote job and took on any routine work, just to leave no digital trace. I became a ghost in his universe of control. I know he was looking for me, through mutual acquaintances who barely exist. In old chats, he wrote that he was worried that I was depressed, that I might harm myself. He created a beautiful legend about a lost friend he was trying to save. He probably still believes it. I'm alive. I have a new, very peaceful life. Sometimes I pick out a book and his voice echoes in my head. This book is weak. I go on a date and think, he'll say this isn't for me. A terrible friendship doesn't end in a fight. It ends in amputation. You cut off the part of yourself that was desecrated by this person, and you're left forever limping, looking back into the dimly lit hallway of your own life, where you seem to still hear the echo of loud, kind laughter. And the most terrifying question hangs in the air. Was that laughter ever real? Or is it just a perfectly rehearsed sound meant to fill the silence in someone's lonely soul until it becomes their own? Alvin and I had been friends since school. He'd always been my mirror, only a better, more refined version. Where I doubted, he acted. Where I remained silent, he spoke for both of us. I thought we were just lucky. The first signs were pleasant. He'd call at 2 a.m. and say, "Don't drink coffee now, you won't sleep." And I'd stand in the kitchen, staring at the kettle. I'd laugh, "Damn, you're psychic." He'd laugh back. Now I wonder, how many times did he simply know my daily routine? Did he know I drank coffee when I wasn't sleeping? That's not psychic. That's the attentiveness of a predator. Then he started predicting not actions, but thoughts. I was just about to buy new sneakers, he'd send a link. I was thinking about visiting my parents, he'd offer his car. I'd start a conversation with my wife the next day, he'd ask if everything was okay. At first, it was comfortable. Then it became a little cramped. It was as if a quiet, caring warden had taken up residence in your head. The turning point came because of my daughter. she had a matinee. My wife and I had gotten into an argument over who would go. We both had important work. That evening, Alvin brought pizza, and I was furious. I didn't say anything about the matinee. I just muttered that I was tired. The next day, at 7 in the morning, he texted, "Go to work. I'll go to the matinee, film Sarah with a good camera, and show you later." He didn't ask. He decided. And you know what? I agreed. I felt better. He'd solved my problem again. After that, he began blurting the lines faster. He started dropping by unannounced. I was passing by, saw the light. He started giving parenting advice. Softly at first, "Sarah, listen to your father." Then he became even harsher. "Max, you're too soft. You need to be stricter." One day, I caught him scolding my 5-year-old daughter for throwing toys around. In my tone, in my intonation, my stomach clenched. This wasn't just a friend. This was someone who felt entitled to dictate the rules in my house. I tried to distance myself. I told him I had a lot of work, that we needed to spend less time together. His reaction was perfect. "Of course I understand. Family comes first. I'm always here if anything happens." And then the coincidences began. My wife accidentally ran into him at my gym. My mother accidentally bumped into him at the clinic. He started showing up everywhere I socialized, but without me. He blended into the group quietly, unnoticeably. He asked about me. How is he coping? I'm worried. He's taking on too much. He projected the image of a caring, responsible friend who was simply worried. And I, distancing myself, looked like an ungrateful fool. And then I found his letter in my inbox. Not to me, to my therapist, in my name. He wrote that he wanted to adjust the timing of our sessions and briefly described his condition, the same symptoms as mine, only slightly more intense. He knew who I was seeing. He knew what I was talking about, and he was trying to get to that, too, into the deepest, most painful corners of my head. I invited him to talk, directly, firmly. I told him I felt suffocated, that I needed to stop. He listened. He nodded. His eyes were filled with such genuine pain and incomprehension that my heart sank. He said, "I did everything only out of love for you. You're like a brother to me. I just wanted to help. If you feel the same way, I'll disappear." And he disappeared. For 2 weeks. And that's when the real horror began. Not his presence, his absence. I caught myself thinking, what would Alvin say? Before making any decisions. I bought the beer he liked. I turned on the TV show we'd been watching. My personality, my tastes were so intertwined with his that when I pulled that thread out, everything began to unravel. I realized he hadn't just barged into my life. He'd spent years building it for himself, so that every part of me would be a reflection of his will. He was the architect, and I was the building that didn't even know who created it. And yesterday, the package arrived. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph of us together from 20 years ago and a tape recorder. I pressed play. Alvin's voice was there, calm, warm, familiar. "Hey, brother, I know you hate me right now, and you're afraid, and you feel betrayed. I understand, but I can't apologize, because everything I did so we could be together. True brothers, not by blood, but in spirit. You think you're free now? You're just left alone in the house we built together, and now half the furniture is gone. You'll stumble through the emptiness. And you'll remember me. You'll remember how good it was when I carried your problems for you, when I thought of you. You'll get tired of being yourself, and when you get tired, I'll wait. Always. Because you're mine. Period. The recording ended. I sat up and looked at the photograph, at two smiling boys who believed friendship was eternal. And suddenly I realized that one of those boys in the photograph was him, only him. And the other was just a projection, clay in his hands, and he hadn't finished sculpting yet. And now the most terrible question, not will he come again, but will I want him to come when this emptiness becomes unbearable, and will that choice be mine? That's it, no ghosts, just a friend who loved you to the point of complete annihilation. Or maybe that's precisely why he loved you. We met when I was 7. He saved my life, pulling me out of a river where I nearly drowned. Since then, we've been through everything. School, my first jobs, my 2 divorces, his unhappy marriage. He was my daughter's godfather. We knew each other inside and out. Alex wasn't just a friend. He was my operating system, a background process that always ran, ensuring stability. I didn't suspect him of anything. Absolutely. The first ring was so quiet I didn't hear it. I returned from a business trip a day early. The apartment smelled of coffee, his coffee. He was the only one with the key to water the plants. I smiled and thought, what a caring man. There was a clean mug on the drying rack, but in the wrong place. No big deal, I thought. He'd washed it and put it away. But I remembered I'd left the drying rack empty, and there it was. 1 mug. 1. And then there was the incident with the book. I was looking for my old passport, rummaging through the entire closet. I didn't find it, but I did find my childhood diary. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. It was lying on top, as if someone had just taken it out and forgotten to put it away. I called Alex and asked if he'd been going through my old papers. He laughed, "What's the point? Looking for money?" I laughed along with him. Paranoia. But the coincidences started piling up, like sediment at the bottom of a glass of clear water. I was talking to my wife about wanting to buy a rare old lens. No one knew about it. 3 days later, Alex casually said, "I heard those lenses are absolutely worthless these days. Don't mess with them." I was stunned. "How do you know?" He shrugged. "You told me yourself last month." I was sure it wasn't. Absolutely not. Then I started having insomnia. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was in the apartment. Not a burglar, just a presence. One day, at 3 in the morning, I went to the kitchen for water, and I saw a fingerprint on the glass lid of the kettle. Fresh, greasy, on a clean surface. Not mine. I have my own unique pattern on the pad of my index finger, a scar from a cut. That scar wasn't on the fingerprint. My mind, like a well-trained dog, immediately came up with a rational explanation. You yourself, half asleep, put the kettle on last night. And I believed it, because the alternative was unthinkable. The turning point was my daughter. She was 5 years old. We were playing in her room, and suddenly she said, "Daddy, why does Uncle Alex sometimes come in at night and look at me when I'm sleeping?" Everything inside me froze. My blood ran cold. "What are you saying, dear? You were dreaming." She shook her head gravely. "No, he's standing in the doorway, and he doesn't move, and then he leaves." That evening, I installed a camera, not a hidden one, a regular children's camera with night vision, under the pretext of watching the dog. I pointed it down the hallway at the front door. 2 nights, nothing. On the 3rd, at 2:14 a.m., the door opened silently. Alex walked in. He had a key. He entered the usual way you enter a house. He took off his jacket and hung it up. He stood in the hallway, just breathing. Then he walked down the hallway and peered into my daughter's room. He stood there for about 5 minutes, motionless. Then he came back and sat on my couch in the living room, and just sat there, staring into space. 20 minutes later, he left just as quietly. I didn't sleep. I watched the video and the world was divided into before and after. It wasn't a burglar, it was a ritual. The next morning, I called him, my hands shaking. I told him I'd found signs of a break-in, that I was changing the locks, so I'd pick up the key. His voice was completely calm, full of concern. "Sure, buddy. I'll stop by after work." What a bastard he is. He arrived. He handed me the key. He looked at me with those loyal, honest eyes of a childhood friend. And he said, "You know, I still have your key, just in case. You don't mind, do you?" It wasn't a question. It was a test. I looked into those eyes and didn't see Alex. I saw emptiness. And I realized that the man sitting across from me knew me better than I knew myself. He knew all my weaknesses, my fears, my schedule. He knew when I would be vulnerable. He had been the architect of my life for the last, a year? 5 years? 20? And the worst part wasn't that he came at night. The worst part was that I didn't know when it started. And what he'd been doing all these years, having unlimited access to me, my family, my life. When did he stop being a friend and become something else? Or had he always been like this? I changed the locks. I installed an alarm. But the feeling of security never returned. Because the fear wasn't that he would break in. The fear was something else. A week ago, my daughter said, "Dad, Uncle Alex is standing outside right now, under our window, watching. Is he worried about us?" I went to the window. Across the street, in the shade of the trees, sat his car. A single cigarette burned. A red light flickered in the darkness. He saw that I had noticed him. The car didn't drive away. It simply turned off its headlights. And then I finally understood. This wasn't over. Locks, alarms, the police, all of that was just for ordinary threats. He wasn't an ordinary threat. He was a part of my life. He was my blind spot. And now that I finally saw him, I realized he had always been watching me, and he would continue to watch. Because that's what true friendship is, right? Knowing each other better than anyone else in the world. Even if one of you ceases to be human and becomes a jailer. And even if you yourself, with your own hands, many years ago, handed him the keys to all your cells. Check who has the keys to your house. Look into the eyes of those you consider a part of you, and ask yourself one question. What if your best friend isn't who they say they are? What if they've been keeping a diary of your life all this time? Not in their memoirs, but in a real, thick notebook. And now they're turning the page to begin a new chapter. A chapter where you're no longer their friend, just a plot device. Sleep well. Your friends are awake. They're watching.